She was 8 months pregnant, homeless, and everyone believed she was crazy. Her billionaire husband had taken everything. Her money, her home, her reputation. He even tried to take her unborn baby. But here is what he did not know. She had evidence. Evidence he forgot existed. Evidence that would send him to prison for 12 years. And tonight, she is about to walk into the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan and destroy his entire world. What happens next will change how you see yourself forever. This story is a blueprint for anyone who has ever been told they were not enough. Picture this. A billionaire sits in Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, $500 wine in hand, his mistress laughing beside him. He owns the room. He owns the moment. He owns everything. Then the door opens, and his pregnant ex-wife walks in. The same woman he threw out like garbage 8 months ago. The same woman he told everyone was crazy. The same woman he tried to frame for federal crimes she never committed. But she is not alone. Beside her stands the most feared attorney on Wall Street. The man who has sent 3 CEOs to prison. The man whose name makes billionaires lose sleep. And his hand rests protectively on her back. The billionaire's wine glass slips from his fingers and shatters on the marble floor. Because in that moment, he realizes something terrifying. The woman he destroyed did not stay destroyed. She rose. And now she is coming for everything he thought he could never lose. But here's what makes this story different from every revenge fantasy you have ever heard. Claire Bennett did not win by becoming as ruthless as the man who betrayed her. She did not sell her soul to defeat him. She did not sacrifice her humanity for victory. She won by discovering something far more powerful. The truth about who she really was. And that discovery will change how you see yourself forever. This is her story, value statement. Before we begin, let me tell you why this story matters. This is not just entertainment. This is a blueprint. A blueprint for anyone who has ever been told they were not enough. For anyone whose trust was weaponized against them. For anyone who looked in the mirror and wondered if maybe they deserved what happened to them. You did not deserve it. And by the time this story ends, you will understand exactly why. Meaning of the story. The meaning of Claire's journey is simple, but profound. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. Your strength is not measured by whether you fall, but by whether you rise. And your victory does not require becoming the monster you are fighting. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to let someone else's cruelty define your story. Claire did not just survive Derek Harrison. She became someone he could never destroy. And that transformation is available to every single person listening right now. The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian cast golden light across Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where the price of admission was measured not in dollars, but in power. Waiters in pressed white jackets glided between tables occupied by hedge fund managers, media moguls, and the kind of people whose names appeared in headlines rather than bylines. The air smelled of truffle oil and ambition, and every conversation carried the weight of deals worth millions. At the center table, positioned precisely where everyone could see him, sat Derek Harrison. The 38-year-old tech billionaire leaned back in his leather chair with the casual arrogance of a man who believed the world existed for his entertainment. His charcoal suit cost more than most Americans earned in a month. His watch could have paid for a modest home in the suburbs. His smile carried the confidence of someone who had never been told no by anyone who mattered. He lifted his glass of Chateau Margaux, a $500 bottle he had ordered simply because he could, and clinked it gently against the glass of the woman beside him. Vanessa Cole laughed at something he whispered, her voice carrying just far enough to announce their presence to nearby tables. Her designer dress, her perfect blonde highlights, her practiced smile, everything about her screamed carefully constructed image. As Derek's PR director and very public mistress, she had mastered the art of being seen while appearing effortlessly natural. "To new money," Vanessa said, loud enough for the neighboring table to hear. "And to everything that comes with it," Derek replied. They drank, they laughed, they existed in the bubble of self-satisfaction that only extreme wealth could provide. Derek surveyed the room with the lazy satisfaction of a predator who had long ago stopped worrying about threats. A senator nodded respectfully from across the restaurant. A tech journalist pretended not to stare while clearly composing tomorrow's gossip column. A former business partner, who Derek had destroyed 3 years ago, quickly looked away when their eyes met. This was his kingdom. These were his subjects. And tonight, like every night, Derek Harrison was exactly where he belonged. He did not know that in approximately 90 seconds, his entire world would begin to crumble. The shift started small. A waiter paused mid-step, silver tray suspended in air. A conversation at a nearby table died mid-sentence. The maitre d' straightened his posture in a way that suggested someone important had arrived, someone even more important than the usual clientele. Derek followed the collective gaze toward the entrance, mildly curious about who could command such attention in a room already filled with Manhattan's elite. Perhaps a celebrity, perhaps a politician, perhaps someone worth cultivating for future business opportunities. His wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered against the marble floor. The crash drew every eye in the restaurant, but Derek did not notice. He did not notice the startled gasps, or the waiter rushing to clean the spreading red stain. He did not notice Vanessa gripping his arm, or the whispers erupting around them. He only noticed her. Standing in the doorway was Claire Bennett, his ex-wife, the woman he had discarded 8 months ago like yesterday's newspaper. The woman he had told everyone was too plain, too weak, too ordinary to belong in his world. The woman he had systematically destroyed, dismantling her reputation, her finances, her very sense of self. She wore a simple black dress that elegantly accommodated her 6-month pregnancy. Her dark hair was pulled back from a face that had always been pretty, but now carried something else entirely. Something Derek had never seen in their 8 years together. Confidence, composure, the quiet certainty of a woman who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. But it was not Claire's presence that made Derek's throat close with something dangerously close to fear. It was the man standing beside her, Marcus Ashford. The name alone was enough to make CEOs lose sleep and corporate lawyers update their resumes. The 45-year-old attorney had built his reputation on one simple principle. He never lost. Not cases, not negotiations, not battles of any kind. His silver-touched hair was immaculately styled. His posture radiated the kind of calm that came from absolute certainty in one's own abilities. His reputation preceded him like a shockwave. 3 Fortune 500 executives had watched their empires crumble after crossing Marcus Ashford. 2 of them were currently in federal prison. The third had fled to a country without extradition treaties and was rumored to be living under an assumed name. Entire corporations had dissolved under the weight of his investigations. Law firms warned their clients about him the way parents warned children about monsters under the bed. Except Marcus Ashford was real, and his appetite for destroying corrupt executives was legendary. And his hand rested protectively at the small of Claire's back, as if she were the most important person in the room. The restaurant fell into a hush, usually reserved for celebrity scandals or public proposals. Every eye tracked Claire as she walked past tables of billionaires and socialites who suddenly seemed diminished by comparison. She moved with the unhurried grace of someone who had nothing left to prove and nothing left to fear. Her heels clicked against the marble floor in a rhythm that sounded almost like a countdown. When her gaze found Derek across the room, she did not flinch. She did not look away. She did not display the trembling uncertainty he had worked so hard to instill in her during their marriage. She held his stare with an expression that communicated something far more devastating than anger or hatred: indifference. Then, almost imperceptibly, the corner of her mouth lifted. Not a smile exactly, more like acknowledgement. A silent message that crossed the distance between them with perfect clarity. I see you. I remember what you did. And I am no longer the woman you destroyed. Vanessa's fingernails dug into Derek's arm hard enough to leave marks. What is she doing here? Vanessa hissed. Who is that man with her? Why is everyone staring at us? Derek could not answer. His voice had abandoned him, along with his composure and his certainty and his unshakable belief that he controlled every situation. Because in that moment, watching Claire glide past him toward a private table in the back of the restaurant, he understood something that terrified him more than any business failure or market crash or hostile takeover. The woman he had thrown away like garbage had become someone far more powerful than he had ever imagined. And the man beside her had the ability to destroy everything Derek had built. The walk to their table took perhaps 30 seconds. To Derek, it felt like hours. Every step Claire took was a reminder of his failure. Every whispered comment from surrounding tables was an indictment of his judgment. He had underestimated her. He had dismissed her as harmless. He had assumed that destroying her life would be the end of her story. He was wrong. And as Claire settled into her seat with Marcus Ashford pulling out her chair like a gentleman from another era, Derek realized that his own story might be approaching an ending he had never anticipated. This is where our tale truly begins. But to understand how Claire Bennett arrived at this moment, walking with quiet dignity through a room of people who once looked down on her, we need to go back. 8 months back, to the night her old life ended and her new one, forged in betrayal and rebuilt through impossible strength, began. 8 months earlier, Claire Bennett's world was small but full. She worked as a senior financial analyst at a mid-sized Manhattan firm, the kind of job that paid well enough for comfort, but not well enough for luxury. Her colleagues respected her work ethic. Her bosses appreciated her attention to detail. She had built a modest career through years of quiet competence. She lived in a penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side, a home she had earned through 8 years of supporting her husband through every failure and triumph. The apartment was Derek's name on the deed, but Claire's touch in every room. The photographs she had chosen, the furniture she had arranged, the small personal details that transformed expensive square footage into something that felt like home. She had met Derek Harrison when he was nobody, a struggling entrepreneur with more ambition than success, burning through savings and investor patience in equal measure. His third startup had just collapsed. His confidence was shattered. His bank account was nearly empty. Most people had given up on Derek Harrison. Claire saw something in him that others missed: potential, drive, the hungry determination of a man who refused to accept defeat, no matter how many times failure knocked him down. She believed in him when no one else did. She worked overtime to cover their rent while he chased investors. She cooked simple meals to save money while he networked at expensive restaurants he could not afford. She held him through sleepless nights when rejection letters piled up and hope seemed foolish. When his mother needed expensive medical treatment, Claire dipped into her own savings without hesitation. When his car broke down before an important meeting, Claire took the subway for 6 months so he could use hers. When depression threatened to swallow him whole after his third company failed, Claire sat beside him through the darkness and reminded him that tomorrow was worth seeing. She was his anchor, his foundation, the one person who never left. And when his fourth startup finally succeeded, when a major tech fund partnership transformed him from struggling dreamer to overnight sensation, Claire assumed their sacrifices had finally paid off. She was wrong. Success changed Derek in ways she did not immediately recognize. His clothes became designer. His friends became exclusively wealthy. His schedule became mysteriously full of meetings that ended after midnight. His eyes developed a hardness that she told herself was just the stress of building an empire. The late nights became routine. The unfamiliar cologne on his shirts became a pattern she refused to acknowledge. The way he looked at her shifted from affection to something closer to tolerance, as if her presence had become an inconvenience he was forced to endure. Claire told herself it was normal. Building an empire required sacrifice. The distance growing between them was temporary. The man she loved was still there, buried beneath the responsibilities of sudden wealth. She did not want to see what was obvious to everyone else. She did not want to admit that the man she had saved no longer needed her. And she certainly did not want to accept that he had already begun planning to discard her. The night everything shattered started with joy. Claire had spent 3 weeks suspecting what a pharmacy test finally confirmed. She was pregnant after years of trying, after countless disappointments, after doctors who gently suggested they consider alternatives. Life had finally found a way. They were going to be parents. She wanted to tell Derek in person. She wanted to see his face when he heard the news. She wanted this moment to be perfect, a memory they would share for the rest of their lives. She practiced her announcement in the bathroom mirror, trying different approaches. "Hey, so funny story," she tried with a casual shrug that felt forced. She attempted a dramatic reveal with jazz hands that made her laugh at her own absurdity. Finally, she settled on simply holding up the positive test and letting her tears speak. She prepared sparkling cider for herself and champagne for Derek. She placed the ultrasound photo in a small gift box wrapped with a blue ribbon, hedging her bets on the gender. She arranged candles around the living room because the moment deserved ambiance. She waited on the couch with nervous excitement, rehearsing his imagined response. He would cry. He would pull her into his arms. He would tell her this was the happiest day of his life. They would finally become the family she had always dreamed of. The clock passed 10. She told herself he was stuck in traffic. The clock passed 11. She convinced herself he was closing an important deal. The clock passed midnight, and the champagne grew warm, and the candles burned down to stubs, and Claire's excitement slowly curdled into dread. At 11:47, the front door finally opened. Derek was not alone. The woman clinging to his arm was beautiful in the manufactured way of someone who treated appearance as a profession. Blonde highlights that cost more than Claire's monthly grocery budget. A designer dress that probably required its own insurance policy. Lipstick slightly smeared in a way that told Claire exactly what they had been doing before arriving. Vanessa Cole, Derek's PR director, the woman Claire had met at company events and dismissed as merely ambitious. She was laughing. That laugh, loud and careless and dripping with the confidence of a woman who believed she had already won a competition Claire hadn't even known was happening. Derek did not look surprised to see Claire waiting. He did not look guilty or ashamed or even mildly uncomfortable at bringing his mistress into the home he shared with his wife. He looked annoyed, like Claire's presence was an inconvenience he had hoped to avoid. "Claire," he said, waving a dismissive hand as if she were an unwanted salesperson, "do not make this dramatic. Vanessa and I are together now." The words did not immediately register. Claire's brain refused to process their meaning, rejected them as impossible, as some cruel joke she did not understand, as anything other than the death sentence for her marriage that they clearly were. "Together?" Her voice cracked on the word. "Derek, we are married. We have been married for 8 years, for now," he corrected. His tone was ice-wrapped in impatience, the voice of a man addressing a subordinate who had failed to meet expectations. "But come on, you knew this was coming. You and I were always from different worlds." Claire felt the room tilt around her. The carefully arranged candles suddenly seemed pathetic. The wrapped gift box containing their baby's first photograph felt like a grenade in her hands. "What are you talking about? We built this life together. I supported you through everything." Derek sighed, as if her loyalty was exhausting to acknowledge. "You are sweet, Claire. You really are. But you are not built for the life I have now. Look around. This apartment, these parties, this world. You do not fit anymore. You never did, if I am being honest." Vanessa smirked from behind him, making no effort to hide her satisfaction. "I tried to tell you gently," Derek continued. "I tried to give you hints, but you just would not take them. So now we are here." Claire's hands trembled around the gift box. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "I am pregnant," she said. The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. That was the moment she learned exactly who she had married. Derek's expression did not soften. His posture did not shift toward compassion or shock or even basic human acknowledgement of the life they had created together. He did not reach for her. He did not ask if she was okay. He did not show any sign that this news meant anything at all. Instead, he stepped closer and lowered his voice to a cruel whisper. "Then you will handle it on your own. I cannot have a baby complicating my public image. Not right now. Vossatech goes public in 6 months. I need to be seen as young, dynamic, unattached." A pregnant ex-wife does not fit that narrative. Claire felt her knees weaken. The room tilted further. "You want me to get rid of our baby? I want you to stop being a problem." Derek's eyes were cold as winter concrete. "The baby is your issue now. The marriage is over. I have already had papers drawn up. You will sign them, you will accept what the prenup entitles you to, which is nothing, and you will disappear quietly." "I gave you 8 years, Claire whispered. "I gave you everything. And I gave you a lifestyle you never could have afforded on your own." His voice dripped with condescension. "Consider it payment for services rendered." Vanessa finally spoke, her voice carrying the particular cruelty of someone who had never experienced real hardship. "Honestly, Claire, did you really think you could keep him? Look at you, then look at me. This was always going to happen. You were just the placeholder until someone better came along." The gift box slipped from Claire's fingers. The ultrasound photo scattered across the floor, landing face up near Derek's expensive shoes. He did not even look at it. No one picked it up. And Claire understood, in that moment, that everything she had believed about her life, her marriage, her future, had been a lie. Claire did not sleep that night. She sat in a guest room of her own apartment, listening to Derek and Vanessa's muffled voices through the walls, trying to convince herself this was a nightmare from which she would soon wake. The sounds of their laughter cut through her like broken glass. The sound of Derek's voice, gentle and affectionate in ways he had not spoken to Claire in years, was somehow worse. She pressed her hands against her belly, against the tiny life growing inside her, and made a silent promise. "I will protect you. Whatever happens, whatever it takes, I will not let him hurt you. Morning brought no relief, only escalation. Claire returned from a short walk, having needed air and space and anything other than the walls of an apartment that no longer felt like home, to find movers in the lobby. They were carrying her belongings, her books and clothes and personal items, the photographs she had chosen, the mementos she had collected, everything that made the penthouse hers rather than just Derek's, packed into boxes and garbage bags. "Ma'am?" a security guard said, stepping in front of the elevator. "I am sorry. Your access has been revoked. This is my home." Claire heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. "I live here. I have lived Kirby for 6 years." The guard avoided her eyes. He was young, maybe 25, clearly uncomfortable with the role he had been assigned. "I am just following instructions, ma'am. Your belongings will be left in the loading area. You have 1 hour to collect them before they are disposed of." Disposed of. Like garbage. Like her. Claire tried her bank card at an ATM. Declined. She tried her credit cards. All canceled. The joint accounts she and Derek had shared for 8 years, accounts she had contributed to, accounts she had helped build, were suddenly inaccessible. Her personal checking account, the one she had maintained separately because her mother had always told her to keep something in her own name, showed a balance of $347. In one night, Claire had gone from penthouse wife to homeless and nearly broke. But Derek was not finished. Within 48 hours, Vanessa's PR machine launched a coordinated assault on Claire's reputation. The attack was sophisticated, systematic, and devastatingly effective. Anonymous sources leaked to gossip blogs and social media accounts. The stories spread with viral efficiency, each one adding details that painted Claire as increasingly unstable and desperate. Sources close to Derek Harrison reveal his estranged wife Claire struggled with erratic behavior and financial mismanagement. Friends say Derek tried to help her for years, but ultimately had to prioritize his mental health. Insiders suggest Claire Harrison displayed signs of delusional thinking and paranoid tendencies. Multiple acquaintances report concerning incidents that Derek chose to keep private out of respect for his wife. An anonymous friend shares that Claire became obsessed with Derek's money after his company succeeded, leading to a complete personality change that made the marriage unsustainable. The lies spread faster than Claire could counter them. Her coworkers began avoiding her in hallways. Her friends stopped returning calls. Her own mother phoned to ask what Claire had done to drive away such a successful husband. "Maybe if you had been more attentive to his needs," her mother suggested. "Men like Derek have options. You should have worked harder to keep him interested." The betrayal from her own family cut deeper than anything Derek had done. On the third day, a courier delivered papers to the coffee shop where Claire sat using free Wi-Fi to search for affordable apartments. Derek's lawyers had prepared everything in advance. The documents were thick and intimidating, filled with legal language designed to confuse and overwhelm. The prenuptial agreement she had signed years ago, barely reading it because Derek assured her it was just a formality, just a technicality to make his investors comfortable, entitled her to nothing. No alimony, no property division, no claim on any assets acquired during their marriage, even those she had directly contributed to building. Worse, the filing included statements from a Dr. William Fenton, a therapist Claire had seen exactly twice during a difficult period 3 years ago, claiming she showed signs of emotional dysregulation and financial irresponsibility. The therapy sessions had been Derek's idea. He had encouraged her to talk to someone about her stress. He had recommended Dr. Fenton specifically. Now she understood why. She had been erased, not just from Derek's life, but from her own. And the world believed she deserved it. For anyone listening who has experienced something similar, let me pause here and say something important. What happened to Claire was not her fault. The lies people believe about us do not become true simply because enough people repeat them. The character assassination that isolated Claire from her support system was deliberate, calculated, and designed specifically to make her feel too ashamed to fight back. If you recognize this pattern in your own life, please understand that the shame you feel was manufactured by someone who needed you to believe you deserved what they did to you. You did not deserve it. You do not deserve it. And what happens next in Claire's story is proof that even the most systematic destruction can be survived. Claire had one person left who believed her. Her aunt, Margot, lived in Queens, in a basement apartment beneath a building that had seen better decades. The stairwell smelled of mold and old cooking oil. The wallpaper was peeling. The radiator clanked through the night like someone was trapped inside it trying to escape. Margot was 67 years old, divorced 3 times, and possessed the kind of wisdom that only came from surviving exactly the situations that destroyed weaker people. When Claire appeared at her door with garbage bags of belongings and tears she could no longer contain, Margot did not offer pity. She offered a couch, a cup of tea, and the truth. "Sweetheart, you look terrible." Margot's voice was rough but kind, like sandpaper wrapped in velvet. "But you are alive, you are pregnant, and you are here. That means you have already survived the hardest part." Claire shook her head, unable to form words through her exhaustion. "I have nothing," she finally managed. "He took everything. My money, my home, my reputation. Everyone thinks I'm crazy." "No!" Margot's voice was firm, carrying the weight of someone who had earned every opinion through experience. "He took what you let him hold. Your bank accounts, your reputation, your home. Those were never really yours to begin with because you shared them with someone who was never really yours. That does not help." Claire wiped her eyes with her sleeve. "I am pregnant and homeless, and everyone I know thinks I am a lunatic." "I know." Margot guided her to the worn couch that would become Claire's bed. "But here is what does help. Look." She pointed to a wall above her tiny kitchen table. Claire blinked at what she saw. 3 framed documents hung in a row, displayed like artwork. Divorce certificates. Each one decorated with increasingly creative captions written in Margot's distinctive handwriting. "Husband number 1," Margot narrated. Caption reads, "Thanks for teaching me that charm and character are not the same thing. He was a salesman. Very good at selling himself. Very bad at being worth the price." Claire stared at the wall, not quite believing what she was seeing. "Husband number 2." Caption reads, "I should have listened when your mother said you were her favorite disappointment. He was a musician, very talented, also very committed to a pharmaceutical relationship that did not include me." A small broken sound escaped Claire's throat. It might have been a laugh. "Husband number 3." Caption reads, "At least you were consistent. Consistently awful. He was a lawyer, the kind who represented people in divorces and decided to conduct thorough research by having affairs with his clients." Claire felt something impossible rise in her chest. Laughter. Small and broken, and mixed with tears, but real. Margot smiled, deep lines crinkling around her eyes. "There she is, the woman who is going to survive this. I was starting to worry you forgot she existed, but survival proved harder than either of them anticipated." The following week brought cascading disasters, each one arriving before Claire could recover from the last. First, her company restructured her position. The official explanation involved budget reallocations and departmental changes that had been planned for months. The email from Human Resources was carefully worded to avoid liability, full of phrases like, shifting priorities, and organizational evolution. The real reason was written in the sympathetic glances of colleagues who knew exactly whose connections had made the decision. Derek's investors held significant stakes in Claire's employer's parent company. A few phone calls, a few suggestions, a few implied threats about future business relationships. She was fired before lunch on a Tuesday. No severance, no reference letter, no warning beyond the security guard who escorted her to her desk to collect her personal items while coworkers pretended not to watch. Second, she discovered the full extent of Derek's financial betrayal. The $50,000 her late father had left her, money she had asked Derek to invest safely for their future children, had been funneled into Vasatech during its early funding rounds. Those shares were now held exclusively in Derek's name. She found the paperwork buried in emails she had never thought to check. Transfer documents she had signed without reading during busy moments. Legal instruments that signed away her inheritance while she was too distracted with supporting her husband's dreams to notice her own money disappearing. Third, and most devastating, she received a letter that made her hands shake so badly she had to read it 3 times. Derek had filed for legal separation with a motion claiming she was mentally unfit to handle financial matters. He was not just divorcing her. He was building a case to prove she was crazy. The motion requested that a court-appointed guardian be assigned to manage any assets Claire might claim. It cited her erratic behavior and Dr. Fenton's concerns about her stability as evidence that she could not be trusted with money. If successful, the motion would prevent Claire from challenging the prenup, contesting the divorce terms, or claiming any rights to the fortune she had helped Derek build. He was trying to have her declared incompetent while she was pregnant with his child. Claire sat on Margot's couch at 3 a.m, unable to sleep. Her hand rested on the small swell of her belly, where new life grew, despite the chaos surrounding it. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered to the darkness. From the bedroom doorway, Margot's voice answered, "Neither did I. The first time, anyway. Or the second time. But by the third time, I had learned something important." "What?" Margot shuffled into the living room, wrapped in a bathrobe that had seen better years. She sat beside Claire and took her hand. "That the people who try hardest to destroy you are always the ones most afraid of what you might become without them." Claire shook her head. "Derek is not afraid of me. He thinks I am nothing." "No, sweetheart. He thinks he made you nothing. There is a difference. Derek is not punishing you because you are weak. He is trying to break you because he knows, somewhere deep down, that you are strong. Strong enough to survive him. Strong enough to expose him. Strong enough to remind the world that everything he built was constructed on your foundation. I do not feel strong." Claire's voice cracked. "I feel like I am drowning." "I know." Margot squeezed her hand. "Strength does not feel like power. It feels like exhaustion. It feels like doing the next thing even when you are too tired to breathe. It feels like getting up tomorrow when everything in you wants to surrender." She leaned closer, her eyes fierce despite the late hour. "But you will get up tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. Because you are not just fighting for yourself anymore, sweetheart. You are fighting for that baby. And mothers do not get tired. They get creative." Claire wanted to believe her. She desperately wanted to believe that strength was something she possessed, rather than something she had lost along with everything else. But at 3 a.m, with nothing to her name and a baby she did not know how to provide for, belief felt like a luxury she could not afford. She did not know that help was coming. She did not know that Derek's past was about to catch up with him in ways he never anticipated. And she did not know that in 3 weeks, a stranger would knock on Margot's door and offer her something more valuable than money or revenge. He would offer her the truth. 3 weeks after losing everything Claire had rebuilt something resembling a routine. She worked 2 jobs now, neither of which matched her education or experience. Mornings found her at a grocery store in Brooklyn, standing at a register for 8 hours until her feet swelled and her back ached and her smile felt permanently frozen on her face. The fluorescent lights gave her headaches. The customers rarely made eye contact. The manager was younger than her and seemed to enjoy reminding her of that fact. Evenings, she did remote data entry work from Margot's kitchen table, typing numbers into spreadsheets under a name that was not quite hers. She had created a new email address, a new work profile, a new identity that could not be connected to Claire Harrison, the crazy ex-wife everyone had heard about, because companies Googled applicants, and Derek's PR campaign had made Claire Bennett unemployable. The work was exhausting. The pay was barely enough to cover the small amount she insisted on giving Margot for groceries. The pregnancy made everything harder, her body changing in ways that left her constantly uncomfortable and frequently nauseous. But it was honest, and it was hers, and every dollar she earned was $1 of freedom Derek could not take away. She was walking home from a doctor's appointment on a gray Tuesday afternoon, lost in anxious calculations about medical bills and baby supplies, when she noticed the man. He stood outside Margot's building, wearing a coat that cost more than Claire's monthly rent. His silver-touched hair was precisely cut, the kind of styling that happened at barbershops where you made appointments months in advance. His posture suggested someone accustomed to commanding rooms rather than waiting outside shabby apartment complexes in Queens. Everything about him screamed power and money, and the kind of world Claire had been forcibly removed from. Her first instinct was to run. Her second instinct was to wonder if Derek had sent someone to deliver more legal threats. But the man's expression was not aggressive. He was not holding papers. He was simply standing, waiting, watching her approach with an intensity that felt almost clinical. When their eyes met, he did not look away. "Mrs. Harrison?" His voice was calm, measured, the kind of voice that expected to be heard without needing to raise itself. "My name is Marcus Ashford." "I believe you need help." Claire stopped walking. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, to the baby growing inside her. She knew that name. Everyone who followed business news knew that name. Marcus Ashford was the attorney who had dismantled 3 corporations and sent 2 CEOs to prison. He was the boogeyman that powerful men warned each other about in whispered conversations at country clubs and corporate retreats. His reputation was legendary and terrifying. He never lost, never. Not cases, not negotiations, not any battle he chose to fight. And he was standing outside her aunt's basement apartment in Queens. "I am not Mrs. Harrison anymore," Claire said carefully. "And I cannot afford whatever you are selling. I can barely afford groceries. I am not selling anything." Marcus took a single step closer, but maintained respectful distance. He seemed aware of how intimidating his presence must be and was attempting to minimize it. "I am here because your ex-husband destroyed someone I loved, and I have spent 5 years waiting for someone brave enough to help me stop him." Claire's stomach tightened. Every instinct screamed at her to walk away. She had learned the hard way what happened when she trusted men who seemed too good to be true. But something in his eyes made her pause. Not warmth exactly, something harder. Something that looked like grief worn smooth by years of carrying it. Something that resembled the expression Claire saw in her own mirror every morning. "Who did he destroy?" she asked. Marcus was silent for a long moment. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My sister. Her name was Sarah. She funded Derek's second company before it failed, back when he was still hungry and desperate and willing to take money from anyone who believed in him. Claire remembered Derek's second company. She had been with him then. She remembered the hope and the failure and the months of depression that followed. She did not remember anyone named Sarah. "What happened?" Claire asked. Marcus's voice did not waver, but something in it cracked like thin ice on a warming lake. Derek falsified documents. He stole her investment. And when she threatened to expose him, he did to her exactly what he is doing to you now. He spread rumors. He questioned her mental stability. He made sure no one would believe her if she talked. Claire felt cold despite the afternoon sun. The parallel was too precise to be coincidental. "What happened to her?" she whispered. "Sarah died 2 years ago." Marcus held her gaze steadily, refusing to look away from the pain of his own words. "She took her own life. Derek Harrison did not pull the trigger, but he loaded the gun, and I have spent every day since building the case to destroy him." The words hung between them, like smoke after an explosion. Claire should have felt vindicated. She should have felt hope at finding an ally with resources and motivation to fight the man who had ruined her life. Instead, she felt suspicious. 8 months ago, she would have accepted help gratefully, without question. She would have been so relieved to find someone on her side that she would have ignored any red flags. But 8 months ago, she had trusted Derek Harrison. She would not make that mistake again. "How do I know you are not just using me?" Claire asked. "Another man with an agenda who needs something from me? Another person who sees me as a tool rather than a human being?" Marcus nodded slowly, as if her suspicion pleased him somehow. "You do not know, and I will not insult you by pretending otherwise. Yes, I want to destroy Derek Harrison. I have wanted that for 5 years. I have dreamed about it. I have planned for it. I have spent more money than you can imagine preparing for this moment." His honesty was disarming. "But I cannot do it without evidence only you can provide," he continued. "Evidence that was created during your marriage. Evidence that Derek believes is safely hidden. Evidence that could send him to prison for the rest of his life. So, you need me. Yes. And what do I get? Justice? Revenge? A settlement check? That depends entirely on what you want." Marcus held her gaze. "I can offer resources, legal support, protection from Derek's attempts to destroy your reputation further. I can make sure your baby is safe and that you have the means to provide for your child." He paused. "But I will not lie to you the way he did. This will be dangerous. Derek has powerful allies and expensive lawyers and no conscience whatsoever. This will be painful. You will have to relive the worst moments of your life in front of strangers. And there is no guarantee we will win." Claire studied him for a long moment. The afternoon light caught the lines around his eyes, the gray at his temples, the weight of years spent carrying anger and grief that would have crushed weaker people. He looked tired. He looked determined. He looked like someone who would not stop until he got what he wanted. Whether that made him an ally or another threat remained to be seen. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course." He pulled a card from his pocket and held it out. "Take 48 hours. Research me. Call the Bar Association. Check court records. Talk to anyone you want. When you are satisfied that I am who I say I am, call that number." Claire took the card. The paper was heavy and expensive. The embossed lettering read simply, "Marcus Ashford, Attorney at Law." Below that, a phone number, nothing else. She looked up to ask another question, but Marcus was already walking toward a black car parked at the corner. He paused and turned back one final time. "Mrs. Bennett, for what it is worth, I am sorry for what he did to you. No one deserves that kind of betrayal. Not you, not Sarah, not anyone." Then he got in the car and was gone. Claire stood on the sidewalk for a long time, holding the card, like it might bite her. Claire spent the next 48 hours doing exactly what Marcus suggested. She researched him obsessively, using every free hour between shifts, every break at the grocery store, every moment when Margot's ancient computer was available and the Wi-Fi was cooperating. Court records showed an unbroken string of victories against corporate corruption. 13 years of cases, dozens of corporations held accountable, executives who thought themselves untouchable finding themselves in prison. News articles profiled his relentless pursuit of white-collar criminals. One journalist had called him the conscience of Wall Street. Another had compared him to a surgeon removing tumors from the body of American capitalism. The Bar Association confirmed his credentials and noted his extensive pro bono work for victims of financial fraud. His license was current. His record was spotless. His reputation was impeccable. She found interviews where he discussed his philosophy. Justice is not about punishment, he had told a reporter 3 years ago. Justice is about accountability, about making sure people understand that their actions have consequences, about protecting those who cannot protect themselves from those who see them as prey. Everything checked out. Marcus Ashford was exactly who he claimed to be. But something still bothered Claire. A question she could not answer with internet searches. On the 48th hour, she called the number on the card. "I have questions," she said when he answered. "I expected you would." His voice was calm, unsurprised. "Would you like to meet in person, or would you prefer to discuss them over the phone?" "Phone is fine for now." "All right. Ask what you need to ask." Claire took a breath. "Why me?" "There must be other people Derek's has hurt. Other witnesses, other victims. Why come to me specifically after 5 years of planning?" Marcus was silent for a moment. "Because you are still standing." He paused as if weighing his next words carefully. "I have tracked Derek's pattern for 5 years. He chooses his victims carefully. People who trust easily, people who sign documents without reading them, people who believe love means never questioning your partner." Claire winced at the accuracy of the description. "Most of them break," Marcus continued. "Most of them disappear into depression or addiction or isolation. They give up. They surrender. They accept the narrative Derek creates about them because fighting seems impossible. And me? You lost everything 3 weeks ago. You should be destroyed. You should be hospitalized or medicated or barely functional. Instead, you are working 2 jobs. You are providing for yourself. You are fighting to survive rather than surrendering to defeat." Claire was quiet for a moment. "That does not mean I am brave. It means I am desperate." Desperation and bravery often look the same from the outside. The difference is what you do when someone offers you a choice. His voice softened slightly. "I am offering you a choice, Claire. You can walk away right now. Keep your head down. Raise your child in peace and never think about Derek Harrison again. I will not judge you for that. I will not blame you. Survival is its own form of victory. Or you can help me expose what he really is. Not for revenge, not for money. For the women who came before you, for the ones who might come after. For Sarah, who deserved better than to be erased by a man who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle." Claire closed her eyes. She thought about Sarah Ashford, a woman she had never met, destroyed by the same man who had destroyed her. She thought about her baby, growing inside her, who would someday ask questions about their father, questions Claire would have to answer honestly, even when honesty was painful. She thought about the future, stretching ahead, years of hiding and scraping by and hoping Derek never decided she was worth targeting again. And then she thought about the alternative, fighting back, risking everything, potentially losing everything all over again, but this time not alone. "Okay," she said. "I am in. Good." Marcus's voice carried something that might have been relief. "Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There is something I need to show you." "Where?" "My office. Midtown. I will send you the address." "All right." "And Claire, bring your old laptop, the one Derek let you keep when he threw you out." "Why?" "Because I think you have evidence you do not even know exists. Evidence Derek forgot about. Evidence that could change everything." Marcus Ashford's law office occupied the top floor of a building that seemed designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Manhattan, the city stretching in every direction like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. The furniture was leather and dark wood, the kind that smelled like money and old power. Every surface gleamed with the kind of polish that came from daily professional cleaning by people who were invisible by design. Claire felt underdressed, overwhelmed, and acutely aware of every scuff on her second-hand shoes. "Thank you for coming." Marcus rose from behind his desk and gestured to a chair across from him. "Please, sit. Would you like coffee? Water? Water would be nice." He poured a glass from a crystal pitcher and handed it to her before settling back into his own chair. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to clarify something important. You are not working for me. You are working with me. That means you have the right to know everything I know, question any decision I make, and walk away at any point without explanation." Claire nodded slowly, appreciating the distinction, even if she was not entirely sure she believed it. "What is on this laptop that matters?" She set the battered computer on his desk. Marcus leaned forward. "Derek's companies run all their sensitive communications through a private cloud server. Employee emails, internal documents, financial records, everything that matters is backed up there, away from prying eyes." "I know. Derek explained it to me once. He said it was for security." "It is for security. His security. The server is encrypted and hidden and virtually impossible to access from outside. But here's what Derek forgot. He tapped the laptop. He gave you access during your marriage. He needed you to sign documents remotely when he was traveling. He needed you to approve transfers when he was unavailable. He needed you to have access so you could do the administrative work he considered beneath him." "I remember," Claire frowned. "But that was just for tax documents. Routine paperwork." Marcus smiled grimly. He lied. "The documents you signed were not tax forms. They were authorizations for fund transfers, paperwork establishing shell companies, legal instruments moving money into accounts that existed only to hide assets from regulators and future investigators." Claire's stomach dropped. "I did not know." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I never read the documents carefully. He always seemed so busy, and I trusted him, and I just signed whatever he put in front of me. I know you did not know. That is precisely why he used you. Your signatures gave him legal cover. If anyone investigated, the paper trail would lead to you, not him." She felt sick. "So I am implicated in his crimes? I could go to prison for something I did not even understand, only on paper. And that is exactly why he kept that laptop. He wanted you to have it. He wanted you to potentially destroy evidence if you ever realized what you had signed. But I did not destroy it." "No." Marcus's eyes held something like admiration. "You did not. Which means we have access to everything he thought was safely hidden." Claire opened the laptop with trembling fingers. The screen flickered to life. Her old email account was still logged in, still synced to Derek's cloud server, because he had never bothered to revoke her access, because he underestimated her, because he assumed she would never think to look. Over the next 3 hours, Marcus guided her through a labyrinth of files she had never noticed. Invoices for services never rendered to companies that did not appear to do any real work. Contracts with entities that existed only on paper signed by executives who did not seem to have LinkedIn profiles or any internet presence at all. Transfer authorizations bearing her signature for amounts that made her dizzy, millions of dollars, moving through accounts she had never heard of, approved by paperwork she had signed without reading. But the real discovery came when they found the voice memos. Derek had a habit of recording reminders to himself, business ideas, meeting notes, random thoughts he wanted to capture before forgetting. He talked into his phone constantly, dictating ideas while driving or exercising or lying in bed at night. Most of the recordings were mundane: grocery lists, call reminders, notes about people's names and preferences that he wanted to remember for networking purposes. Some were incriminating. One was devastating. The recording was dated 18 months earlier. Derek's voice filled the office speakers, casual and confident and utterly damning. Note to self: Claire is asking too many questions about the Meridian Holdings transfer. She noticed the amount was larger than usual and wanted to know what it was for. Need to distract her. Maybe a vacation, maybe jewelry, whatever keeps her signing documents without reading them. Claire's hands shook. She is useful right now, Derek's recorded voice continued. But if she ever becomes a problem, I have insurance. Everything is in her name. Everything traces back to her. If the SEC ever comes knocking, she takes the fall, not me. He was planning to frame you. Marcus's voice was quiet but hard as steel. This entire time, the recording continued, Derek's voice thoughtful and utterly remorseless. Vanessa thinks we should accelerate the timeline. Get Claire out before the IPO. Make it look like she was always the unstable one. I do not disagree. Her usefulness is ending. Time to upgrade. The recording ended. Claire sat in silence, tears streaming down her face. Not from sadness, not from grief, from fury. 8 years. 8 years she had given him, her savings, her career, her trust, her love. Every sacrifice she had made, every compromise, every moment she had put his needs above her own, and the entire time he had been planning to destroy her if she ever became inconvenient. Are you okay? Marcus asked. No. Claire wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. But I will be. She looked at the laptop screen, at the files that proved exactly who her ex-husband really was. For the first time in months, she felt something other than fear or despair or exhaustion. She felt dangerous. What do we do now? She asked. We build a case. Carefully, systematically. Derek has lawyers and money and media connections. We need to be strategic about how and when we present this information. To who? The Vasatech Board of Directors. They have a fiduciary responsibility to shareholders. If they learn their CEO has been committing fraud, they will have to act. And if they do not believe me, Marcus smiled grimly. That is why we have these recordings. That is why we have the documents. That is why we have evidence even Derek does not know exists. Claire took a deep breath. When do we start? We already have. 4 weeks later, Claire stood outside the Vasatech Boardroom on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Midtown Manhattan. She wore the nicest dress she owned, a simple black number she had purchased at a consignment shop for $30. Her shoes were borrowed from Margot, half a size too small, pinching her swollen feet with every step. Her belly had grown noticeably larger in the past month, 8 months pregnant now. The baby shifted constantly, as if sensing its mother's anxiety and responding with restless movement. She was terrified, but she was also ready. The board meeting had been arranged through careful manipulation. Marcus had contacts who had mentioned certain concerns about financial irregularities to certain people who had influence over the board's agenda. Rumors had been strategically placed. Questions had been casually raised. The board, nervous about the upcoming IPO, had agreed to hear from an anonymous source then with information about potential irregularities. They did not know the source was Derek's ex-wife until Claire walked through the door. The reaction was immediate and visceral. 12 faces turned toward her. Expressions ranged from confusion to hostility to carefully masked curiosity to outright disgust. Several board members shifted uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Derek sat at the head of the table, exactly where a CEO belonged. His face went pale when he saw her, then red with anger, then settled into a mask of controlled fury that did nothing to hide the panic in his eyes. "What is this?" He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. "She cannot be here. This is completely inappropriate. She is mentally unstable. She is vindictive. She will say anything to hurt me." The chairman, a silver-haired man named Richard Wellman, who had built his fortune in real estate before becoming a professional board member, raised a hand. "Mr. Harrison, please sit down. We agreed to hear from this witness. Let us at least listen before passing judgment. This is my ex-wife." Derek's voice carried a desperate edge. "She is biased and delusional, and she has been harassing me for months." Several board members exchanged glances. Claire walked to the presentation screen Marcus had arranged, her borrowed shoes clicking against the floor. Her hands shook as she connected her laptop. Her voice wavered as she introduced herself. "My name is Claire Bennett. I was married to Derek Harrison for 8 years. During that time, I unknowingly signed documents that facilitated financial crimes I did not understand until recently." She took a breath. "I have evidence. I have recordings. I have documents. And I am going to show you exactly who your CEO really is." Derek opened his mouth to interrupt, but the chairman silenced him with a look. "Continue, Mrs. Bennett." Claire pressed play on the first recording. Derek's voice filled the boardroom. Note to self, Claire is asking too many questions about the Meridian Holdings transfer. She watched the board members' faces as they listened, watched their expressions shift from skepticism to concern to something approaching horror. She played more recordings. She displayed documents. She walked the board through every fraudulent transfer, every shell company, every lie Derek had told her to sign. The room grew quieter with each revelation. When she finished, the silence stretched for nearly a full minute. Then the chairman spoke. "Mr. Harrison, do you have an explanation for what we have just seen and heard?" Derek stood, his composure cracking visibly. "This is fabricated. She manipulated those files. She doctored those recordings. She has been planning this for months, trying to destroy me because I left her." Claire held his gaze steadily. "I spent 8 years supporting you. I signed whatever you asked because I trusted you. I did not know you were using me as a shield for your crimes. But I know now." A board member named Patricia Chen, known for her sharp, analytical mind, leaned forward. "These recordings seem quite explicit, Mr. Harrison. Your own voice discussing how to frame your wife if you were ever investigated." Derek's mask slipped further. "She is twisting everything. This is taken out of context. She is crazy. Everyone knows she is crazy." The chairman exchanged glances with other board members. "I think we have heard enough for today." His voice was carefully measured. "Mr. Harrison, the board will need to convene privately to discuss next steps." "What next steps?" Derek demanded. "You are not seriously considering believing her over me?" "Given the seriousness of these allegations," the chairman said slowly, "we have no choice but to suspend your decision-making authority pending a full and independent investigation." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Derek stared at Claire with pure hatred, his eyes promising violence that his position prevented him from delivering. "You have no idea what you have started." She met his eyes without flinching. "No, Derek. You started this 8 months ago. I am just finishing it." 20 minutes later, Claire walked out of the Vasatech building into bright afternoon sunlight. Marcus was waiting by a town car. You did it. His voice carried a note of admiration she had never heard before. We did it. He shook his head. No, you walked into that room alone. You faced him alone. You delivered the evidence alone. I provided resources and strategy, but the courage was entirely yours. This victory is yours, Claire. For the first time in 8 months, she smiled. A real smile. Not forced or fragile, but genuine. Her phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Margot. Saw the news already. Wall Street is losing its mind. The gossip sites are going crazy. Come home and celebrate. I am making lasagna. Claire laughed out loud. Margot had somehow become her biggest cheerleader, her strategic advisor, her emotional anchor, and her loudest supporter all at once. She got in the car and allowed herself for one afternoon to believe the worst was over. She should have known better. She should have remembered that men like Derek Harrison did not accept defeat gracefully. They retaliated, and Derek's retaliation was already in motion before Claire's car reached the end of the block. 72 hours after Claire's boardroom triumph, her world collapsed for the second time. She woke to her phone exploding with notifications, texts from numbers she did not recognize, missed calls from journalists, social media alerts that made her blood run cold. The headline on every major news site was identical. Breaking: Derek Harrison's ex-wife accused of fabricating evidence. Forensic analysis reveals doctored files. Claire's hands shook as she scrolled through the articles. Derek had hired a digital forensics team from a prestigious security firm. Their analysis, released through carefully orchestrated press contacts, claimed Claire's recordings were manufactured, spliced together from fragments, manipulated through artificial intelligence software to create statements Derek never actually made. The technical jargon was impressive and completely fabricated, but the media did not know that. The board did not know that, and most importantly, the court of public opinion did not know that. Within hours, the narrative flipped completely. Claire Bennett, desperate ex-wife, fabricates evidence against billionaire husband in revenge scheme. Sources say Claire Harrison showed signs of obsessive behavior before divorce. Digital forensics expert claims recordings are clearly artificial, likely created using widely available AI tools. The board reversed their decision before noon. Derek was reinstated with a public apology for the misunderstanding and the distress caused by unfounded allegations. But that was not the worst part. The worst part came in a legal document delivered to Margot's apartment by a courier who would not meet Claire's eyes. Derek was filing for emergency custody of their unborn child. His filing claimed Claire was mentally unstable, financially irresponsible, and posed a danger to any child in her care. He cited her erratic behavior at the board meeting as evidence. He included new statements from Dr. Fenton, the compromised therapist, asserting that Claire showed signs of delusional thinking and potential danger to herself and others. The custody hearing was scheduled for 1 week before her due date. If Derek won, he would take her baby before she even left the hospital. Claire called Marcus immediately. They are saying I faked everything. Her voice cracked. They are saying I manipulated the recordings. I know. His voice was tight with controlled fury. Derek's forensics team is lying. I have already contacted independent experts who will testify the evidence is genuine, but the board believed them. The media believed them. Everyone believes them. The board believed what they wanted to believe. Derek has been making them rich for years. They were looking for an excuse to ignore what you showed them. What about the custody filing? Marcus paused. That is more complicated. Family court operates differently than corporate law. Derek has resources to drag this out for years if he wants to. I do not have years. Claire pressed her hand against her belly. I have 1 week. I know. And Claire, I need to tell you something. His voice carried a warning. The custody filing includes a demand for your medical records, including therapy notes. Claire froze. What? Derek is claiming your sessions with Dr. Fenton prove mental instability. His lawyers are requesting full access to everything you discussed in therapy. But Dr. Fenton works for Derek. He will say whatever Derek wants him to say. I know. That is the problem. Unless we can prove Fenton is compromised, his testimony could be devastating. Claire sank onto Margot's couch, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she faced. Everything she had built, every piece of evidence she had gathered, every moment of courage she had summoned. It meant nothing. Derek had simply bought his way back to the top and was using his resources to crush her completely. The doubt that crept into her mind was perhaps the cruelest part. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe she had imagined the recording said something they did not. Maybe the forensics team was right, and she had somehow manipulated evidence without realizing it. Maybe she was the unstable ex-wife Derek claimed she was. Maybe she deserved what was happening to her. Here is something I have learned from listening to stories like Claire's, and maybe some of you listening right now have learned it too. The people who hurt us are often experts at making us doubt ourselves. They plant seeds of uncertainty. They use our own empathy against us. They make us question whether the pain they caused was somehow our own fault. They turn our reasonable desire to see both sides of every situation into a weapon that wounds only us. If you are listening to this and recognizing that pattern, please hear me clearly. You are not crazy. You are not imagining things. The doubt you feel was deliberately created by someone who needed you to distrust yourself. Claire almost surrendered that night. She almost called Derek's lawyers and agreed to whatever they wanted. She almost accepted that the fight was over and she had lost. But at 3 a.m, Margot found her sitting in the dark and said something that changed everything. You know what all 3 of my ex-husbands had in common? Claire shook her head. They all wanted me to give up. Every single one of them. When they realized I was not going to just accept what they did to me, they escalated. They made things worse. They turned mutual friends against me. They spread rumors. They did everything they could to make me feel like fighting was pointless. What did you do? Margot sat beside her on the couch. The first time, I almost gave up. I spent 6 months crying and barely functioning. But then I realized something. He did not actually win. He just convinced me to stop playing. The game was still going. I had just removed myself from it. And the other times, I learned faster. By the 3rd husband, I understood that giving up is easy. Living with regret is hard. I would rather fight and lose than surrender and spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had been brave enough to try. But I am tired. Claire's voice broke. I am so tired of fighting. I know, sweetheart. Margot took her hand. But you are not fighting for yourself anymore. You are fighting for that baby. And mothers do not get tired. We do not get to give up. We adapt. We survive. We find ways to win that nobody expects. Claire looked at her aunt, at the woman who had survived 3 terrible marriages and emerged with her humor and her strength intact. How? By stopping playing their game. Margot squeezed her hand. You have been fighting Derek on his terms. Lawyers and boardrooms and legal documents. That is his world. He has spent decades learning how to win in that world. So what do? Find your own world. Find a battlefield where his money and his lawyers and his connections do not matter. The words settled into Claire's exhausted mind. Her own battlefield, her own rules, her own way of fighting. She thought about everything that had happened, the evidence she had gathered, the resources Marcus had provided, the limitations of legal systems designed to protect people with power. And then she thought about something else. Vanessa Cole, Derek's mistress, the PR director who had orchestrated Claire's destruction, the woman who had stood in Claire's living room and laughed at her pain. Vanessa was the one who had managed Derek's public image. Vanessa was the one who knew how to manipulate media narratives. Vanessa was the one who had created the campaign that turned Claire into a crazy ex-wife, which meant Vanessa knew how it all worked. And people who knew how systems worked often protected themselves against those same systems. "I need to make a phone call," Claire said. "At 3 in the morning?" "Yes." She dialed Marcus and told him what she was thinking. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Marcus said, "That is either brilliant or insane. But you need help I cannot provide. Legal strategy is my specialty. What you are describing requires a different kind of expertise." "What kind?" "The kind that involves accessing information someone does not want you to have." "You mean hacking?" "I mean creative information retrieval." "Despite everything," Claire laughed, "is there someone who does that?" "As a matter of fact," Marcus said slowly, "I know exactly who to call." His name was Dennis. He was 72 years old, lived in the apartment directly above Margot's, and spent most of his days watching conspiracy documentaries and arguing with people on the internet about whether the moon landing was real. He also happened to have spent 30 years working for a government agency he still was not allowed to name, doing things he still was not allowed to describe, using skills he had never quite retired. Margot had known him for years. She described him as mostly harmless, occasionally brilliant, and absolutely convinced that the government was reading his emails. When Claire knocked on his door at 7 in the morning, Dennis answered in a bathrobe covered with coffee stains and an expression of deep suspicion. "Whatever you are selling, I am not buying. I am not selling anything." Claire took a breath. "I need help finding information about someone. Information they do not want found." Dennis's eyes sharpened with sudden interest. "What kind of information?" "The kind that could destroy the man who is trying to take my baby." For a long moment, Dennis studied her. Then he stepped back and opened the door wider. "Well then, you better come in." His apartment looked exactly like Claire expected. Computers covered every flat surface. Cables snaked across the floor like electronic vines. Monitors displayed scrolling text and complex diagrams that meant nothing to her but clearly meant everything to him. "Tell me about this man," Dennis said, settling into a chair surrounded by keyboards. Claire told him everything: Derek, Vanessa, the board meeting, the forensics report, the custody filing. Dennis listened without interrupting. When she finished, he cracked his knuckles and turned to his computers. "Vanessa Cole is not her real name," he said, fingers flying across keyboards. "She used to be Vanessa Brennan. Changed it legally 7 years ago after a situation in Austin." "What kind of situation?" "The kind where she helps rich men hide assets from their wives, then flips on them when things go south." Dennis pulled up a series of court documents on one screen. "She did the exact same thing to a tech CEO in Texas, helped him commit fraud, collected evidence of everything, then testified against him for immunity when the feds started investigating." Claire stared at the screen. "She has done this before. Multiple times, probably." Dennis scratched his chin. "But here's the interesting part. Vanessa is paranoid. She records everything. Every conversation, every meeting, every phone call. It is her insurance policy. If someone tries to throw her under the bus, she can throw them under first." "Where does she keep those recordings?" Dennis grinned. "That is where things get creative." Over the next 6 hours, Dennis explained how Vanessa backed up her insurance recordings to a private cloud server she accessed through a virtual private network. The security was sophisticated, multiple layers of encryption and anonymization designed to hide both the contents and the location. but nothing was truly impenetrable. I cannot access it directly, Dennis admitted, but I can tell you where the server is located and what kind of encryption she uses. Someone with physical access to her devices could potentially download everything. Claire thought about this. How would I get physical access? That, Dennis said, is above my pay grade. I find information. What you do with it is your business. Claire thanked him and walked back downstairs to Margot's apartment, her mind racing. Physical access to Vanessa's devices meant getting close to her, and getting close to Vanessa meant putting herself in danger. But she had less than a week before the custody hearing, and she had nothing left to lose. The plan Claire devised was equal parts brilliant and reckless. Vanessa had a routine. Every Thursday evening, she attended a networking event at a hotel near Times Square. The same hotel where Claire had once worked as a temp during her college years, filling in for sick employees and learning the layout of service corridors and staff entrances. The same hotel where she still knew someone in security. Getting inside was easier than she expected. Her old contact, a woman named Rita, who had never forgotten Claire's kindness during a difficult time years ago, provided a service entrance code and a borrowed uniform. Just be careful, Rita warned. If anyone catches you, I never saw you. I understand. Thank you. Getting close to Vanessa was harder. The networking event was crowded with exactly the kind of people Claire had spent months avoiding. Wealthy, connected, powerful, business cards exchanged like currency, conversations conducted in the careful language of people who measured every word for advantage. Any one of them might recognize Claire from the tabloid coverage. But pregnancy had changed her appearance more than she realized. Her face was fuller, her posture different, her hair styled in a way she had never worn it during her marriage. And no one expected Derek Harrison's crazy ex-wife to be serving champagne at a corporate mixer. She circulated through the crowd, carrying a tray and keeping Vanessa in her peripheral vision. The PR director stood near the bar, laughing with a group of executives, her phone clutched in one perfectly manicured hand. Claire waited. When Vanessa finally excused herself to take a call in a quiet corner, setting her phone on a small table, while she searched through her purse, Claire made her move. She approached with a tray of drinks, heart hammering against her ribs. Champagne, ma'am? Vanessa waved dismissively without looking up. Claire's hand trembled slightly as she set down a glass. Her other hand, hidden by the tray, pressed a small device Dennis had given her against Vanessa's phone. The device needed 30 seconds of contact to copy the contents. Claire counted silently while pretending to arrange glasses. 10 seconds. Vanessa found her lipstick and began touching up in a compact mirror. 20 seconds. Another server approached, asking if Claire needed help with her tray. 25 seconds. Claire smiled and declined. Her heart hammering so loudly she was certain everyone could hear. 30 seconds. She lifted the tray and the device together, tucking them smoothly against her side. Thank you, ma'am. Enjoy your evening. Vanessa did not even look at her. Claire walked away on legs that felt like jelly. She made it to the service corridor before allowing herself to breathe, made it to the street before allowing herself to shake. Then she walked into the night, carrying evidence that would change everything. The recordings on Vanessa's phone were exactly what Dennis predicted. Hours of conversations between Vanessa and Derek, captured without his knowledge. Insurance against the day he inevitably betrayed her, the way he betrayed everyone. In one recording, Derek discussed the custody case. I do not actually want the kid. His voice was cold and clear, utterly devoid of paternal feeling. I just do not want her to have it. Makes me look bad, like I abandoned my own child. So what is the plan? Vanessa asked. Get custody, hire a nanny, ship the kid off to boarding school as soon as possible. Out of sight, out of mind. I just need Claire to suffer. I need her to know that even when she fights, she loses. Claire listened with tears streaming down her face. He wanted her baby, only to hurt her. He would take her child and treat them like an inconvenience to be managed, rather than a life to be loved. Another recording was even more damaging. What about the SEC investigation? Vanessa asked. The one that woman from the Oversight Committee mentioned? Derek laughed. Relax. Everything traces back to Claire. All the shell companies are in her name. If anyone investigates, she takes the fall. I made sure of it years ago. So, she goes to prison? If it comes to that, yeah, better her than me. Besides, who is going to believe the mentally unstable ex-wife over the successful billionaire? I control the narrative. I always have. The recording ended. Claire sat in the darkness of Margot's apartment, listening to her ex-husband casually discuss sending her to prison for crimes he committed. She had suspected it. She had feared it. But hearing it in his own words, with his own casual cruelty, broke something inside her and then rebuilt it into something harder, something unbreakable, something that would not stop until justice was served. She called Marcus. I have everything we need, and this time we are not going to the board. Claire did not take the evidence to the Vossatech board of directors. She did not contact Derek's lawyers with settlement demands. She did not play by any of the rules Derek expected her to follow. She went nuclear. The Wall Street Journal received an encrypted package containing every recording, every document, every piece of evidence Claire had gathered. The package included a detailed explanation of how the evidence was obtained, verification of its authenticity, and contact information for independent forensic experts who could confirm the recordings were genuine. The journal spent 48 hours verifying everything. They interviewed sources. They consulted experts. They confirmed that Derek's forensics team had lied about the original recordings. And then they published. The story broke on a Tuesday morning with the kind of headline that destroys careers. Exclusive. Vossatech, CEO Derek Harrison recorded discussing fraud, framing ex-wife, and using custody battle as weapon. By Tuesday afternoon, Derek's world was burning. Federal investigators announced they had opened an inquiry into Vossatech's financial practices. The SEC froze company assets pending review. Derek's passport was flagged. His lawyers began distancing themselves publicly, issuing carefully worded statements about being as surprised as anyone by these revelations. The board convened an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove Derek as CEO effective immediately. But the part that destroyed Derek's carefully constructed image was not the financial crimes. It was the custody recordings. The audio of Derek saying he did not actually want his child, that he only wanted custody to hurt Claire, went viral within hours. Social media exploded with outrage. Women across America shared their own stories of manipulation and coercion, of custody battles used as weapons, of systems that protected abusers and punished victims. Derek Harrison became the symbol of everything wrong with how the world treated women who dared to fight back. The custody hearing was canceled. The family court judge, watching the same news coverage as everyone else, determined that Derek Harrison was not a suitable candidate for custody of any child. The motion was dismissed with prejudice, meaning it could never be filed again. Claire won. But she felt no triumph, only exhaustion and relief, and the persistent ache of a woman who had fought harder than anyone should have to fight for something as basic as keeping her own child. 2 days after the Wall Street Journal story broke, Claire's water broke. She gave birth to a daughter at 4:17 in the morning. The labor was long and painful, 16 hours of contractions that felt like her body was trying to tear itself apart. Margot held her hand through all of it, coaching her through breathing exercises and distracting her with stories about her own terrible experiences with childbirth. When it was over, when the nurses placed a tiny, perfect, screaming baby in Claire's arms, everything else fell away. The lawsuits, the headlines, the months of fear and fighting. None of it mattered. Only this moment, only this child, only this future she had clawed her way toward through impossible odds. She named the baby Sarah, after Marcus's sister, after the woman Derek had destroyed years earlier, after the reason any of this had happened at all. When Marcus came to the hospital the next day, he stood in the doorway of Claire's room and did not speak for a long time. Finally, he said, she would have loved this, knowing her name meant something good in the world again. Claire nodded, too exhausted and too happy for words. "Thank you," Marcus said, quietly, "for everything you did, for fighting when it would have been easier to give up, for giving my sister's story a different ending." Despite everything she had been through, despite the months of horror and fear and desperate fighting, Claire smiled, because she had won. Not for revenge, not for money, not even for justice exactly. She had won for her daughter, for the future they would build together, for the life that was just beginning. 6 months later, Derek Harrison stood in a federal courtroom for sentencing. The charges against him filled multiple pages: fraud, obstruction, witness tampering, money laundering, tax evasion. Each count carried years of potential imprisonment. Claire sat in the gallery, watching the man who had once promised to love her forever receive judgment for his crimes. He looked different now, smaller somehow. The expensive suits and confident posture had given way to prison clothing and slumped shoulders. The arrogance that once seemed untouchable had crumbled under the weight of consequences he never believed would reach him. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, addressed him directly. "Mr. Harrison, you have spent years exploiting people who trusted you. You manipulated your own wife, endangered her freedom, and attempted to weaponize your unborn child as a tool of revenge. You falsified evidence. You corrupted professionals. You used your wealth and power to systematically destroy anyone who threatened to expose you." Derek said nothing. His shoulders remained slumped. His eyes stayed fixed on the table in front of him. "You have shown no remorse," the judge continued, "no accountability, no understanding of the harm you have caused to countless individuals and institutions. Your behavior represents everything wrong with a system that allows the wealthy to operate above the law." She paused. "The sentence is 12 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 8. Additionally, all assets traced to fraudulent activity are hereby forfeit to be distributed among your victims." The gavel fell. Derek was led away in handcuffs without looking at Claire or anyone else in the gallery. She expected to feel something triumphant in that moment: vindication, or satisfaction, or at least relief that this chapter was finally closing. Instead, she felt tired, deeply, profoundly tired, and ready to move on. Vanessa Cole did not fare much better. Her cooperation with prosecutors earned her a reduced sentence. But her reputation was destroyed beyond recovery. The recordings she had made as insurance became evidence against her. The pattern of behavior Dennis had uncovered followed her into every future opportunity. Last anyone heard, she was working at a car dealership in Tampa, Florida, a far cry from the Manhattan power circles she once dominated. Dr. Fenton lost his license. The investigation into Derek's crimes uncovered the full extent of his arrangement with the corrupt therapist. Fenton had been taking payments for years in exchange for falsifying reports and sharing confidential patient information. His practice was closed. His patients were notified. His name became synonymous with professional betrayal. The ending that mattered most to Claire did not happen in a courtroom. It happened in a small house in Brooklyn. Marcus helped her purchase it using settlement money from Tech shareholders, who had sued Derek separately for defrauding investors. The company's collapse had affected thousands of people, and the legal process of sorting through the wreckage would continue for years. But Claire had enough. Enough to buy a modest 3-bedroom home with a small backyard and a kitchen that needed updating. Enough to start a new life. It was not a mansion. It was not a penthouse. It was not the kind of property that impressed anyone at cocktail parties. It was hers. Completely, legally, permanently hers. She stood in the empty living room on her first day of ownership, holding 6-month-old Sarah against her shoulder, looking at the space where their new life would unfold. The walls needed painting. The floors needed refinishing. The previous owners had left behind a faint smell of cigarette smoke that would take months to fully eliminate. Claire did not care about any of it. This was home. Real home. Not a borrowed space in someone else's life, but a foundation she had built herself through sacrifice and courage, and refusing to give up when everything inside her wanted to surrender. Margot appeared in the doorway with a housewarming gift. It was a small frame containing her newest Wall of Shame entry, Derek's mugshot, obtained through public records, decorated with a carefully lettered caption. Ex-husband of my niece, currently dating prison cellmate named Big Tony. Claire laughed until tears streamed down her face. Is it too mean? Margot asked, grinning. It is perfect. They hung it in the kitchen, where Claire could see it every morning while making coffee, a reminder of where she had been and how far she had come. There is something important I want to share with everyone who has listened this long. Maybe you found Claire's story entertaining. Maybe it felt like justice or wish fulfillment, or just a good drama to pass the time. But for some of you, I suspect it hit closer than that. Some of you recognized pieces of yourself in Claire. The trusting partner who signed documents without reading them. The supportive spouse who sacrificed personal dreams for someone else's ambition. The abandoned woman who wondered if maybe, somehow, the destruction of her life was her own fault. If that is you, please hear me clearly. You are not crazy. You are not stupid. You are not weak for having trusted someone who betrayed that trust. The people who hurt us are often experts at making their cruelty look like our failure. They plant seeds of doubt. They weaponize our empathy. They use our love against us. They make us question whether we deserved what happened to us. But you are still here. Still standing, still listening or reading or surviving. And that means you have already proven something important. You are stronger than they wanted you to be. 2 years after Derek Harrison's conviction, Claire Bennett stood at a podium in a hotel conference room, addressing 300 women who had traveled from across the country to hear her speak. The organization she had founded, Second Chapter, provided legal resources, financial counseling, and emotional support for women navigating divorce from controlling or abusive partners. In 2 years, they had helped over 4,000 women rebuild their lives. Claire had not planned to become an advocate. She had not planned to become a public figure or a speaker or someone whose name people recognized. But sometimes the path forward reveals itself only after you have already started walking. When I lost everything, she told the audience, I thought my story was over. I thought the woman I had been was dead, and the woman I had become was too broken to matter. She paused, looking out at faces that reflected her own journey back at her. I was wrong. Losing everything was not the end of my story. It was the beginning. Because sometimes you have to be stripped down to nothing before you can discover who you really are. The applause that followed was not about her speech. It was about recognition, connection, the shared understanding of women who had walked through fire and refused to be consumed by it. After the event, Marcus found her in the hallway. "Good speech," he said. "Good material," she smiled. Turns out, trauma makes for compelling storytelling. They had developed an easy friendship over the past 2 years. Marcus served on second chapter's board. He provided pro bono legal consultation for complicated cases. He came to dinner at Claire's house every few Sundays, bringing expensive wine and leaving with containers of Margot's leftover lasagna. If anyone suspected there might be something more between them, neither confirmed nor denied it. Some stories do not need immediate resolution. They just need space to unfold. "Speaking of complicated stories," Marcus said, "there is something I should tell you." Claire raised an eyebrow. "I received a letter yesterday, from prison, from Derek." The name no longer made her flinch. It was just a word now, a chapter she had closed. What did he want? To warn you, apparently. Marcus pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. "He claims Vanessa was not working alone, that someone else was pulling strings the entire time." Claire took the letter and scanned it quickly. Derek's handwriting was messier than she remembered. Prison had changed him in ways she chose not to analyze too deeply. "Check into Vanessa's connection to Harrison Industries," the letter read. "My father's old company. The one I thought was bankrupt. It was not, and whoever owns it now is coming for you." Claire read the words twice. She felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, exactly, something more like alertness. "Do you believe him?" she asked. "I believe Derek would say anything to make himself seem like less of a villain." Marcus shrugged. "But I also believe desperate men sometimes tell the truth by accident, especially when they think that truth might benefit them somehow." "What do you want to do about it?" "Investigate, quietly. See if there is anything to his paranoia, or if this is just another manipulation attempt." Claire nodded and handed back the letter. She thought about mentioning the text she had received 2 days earlier, the one from an unknown number that had made her blood run cold. "Hello, Claire. We have not met yet, but we will soon. Thank you for doing exactly what we needed you to do." She had blocked the number and tried to forget about it, but some things did not want to be forgotten. "Whatever it is," she said finally, "we will handle it." "We?" "Of course." Claire smiled. "You did not think I was going to let you have all the fun, did you?" Marcus laughed. The sound was warm and unexpected and exactly what she needed to hear. They walked out of the hotel together into a city that had once seemed designed to crush her and now felt like home. Claire's phone buzzed. A photo from Margot of Sarah playing in the backyard, covered in mud and grinning like the world was the greatest adventure imaginable. She saved the image and kept walking. The sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere in a federal prison, Derek Harrison was eating dinner from a metal tray. Somewhere in Florida, Vanessa Cole was selling cars to tourists. And somewhere in Brooklyn, a modest house waited with a wall of shame in the kitchen and a little girl who would grow up knowing that her mother had fought for her. Some stories end with revenge. Some stories end with justice. This one ended with something simpler and more powerful than either. It ended with Claire Bennett walking toward her future, unafraid of whatever came next, because she had learned something that no one could ever take away from her. She was enough. She had always been enough. And anyone who ever made her doubt that had only revealed their own weakness, not hers. But before you go, let me share one final thought. Claire's victory did not come from becoming as ruthless as the people who hurt her. It did not come from revenge or rage or matching cruelty with cruelty. It came from refusing to let their destruction define her. She survived not by fighting fire with fire, but by building something new from the ashes, something real, something lasting, something that would help other women avoid the traps she had fallen into. If you are in the middle of your own impossible situation right now, please remember that. You do not have to become someone terrible to defeat terrible people. You just have to become someone true. And sometimes that is the most powerful victory of all. Thank you for listening. If Claire's story meant something to you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Because sometimes the stories we tell can save lives we will never meet. And now, if you will excuse me, there's a little girl in Brooklyn who probably needs a bath and a bedtime story. And her mother would not miss it for the world. Now, if this story spoke to something inside you, I have a small request. Hit that like button, not for me, for the algorithm, so this story can reach someone else who needs to hear it tonight. Leave a comment below. Tell me your thoughts. Tell me what resonated. Tell me your own story if you feel comfortable sharing. This community is built on connection, and your voice matters. Share this video with someone who is going through their own impossible battle right now. Sometimes a story arrives at exactly the right moment to change everything. And if you have not already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Because every week we share stories like this one. Stories about ordinary people discovering extraordinary strength. Stories about survival and justice and the quiet power of refusing to give up. You are not alone in your struggle. And neither was Claire. Closing statement. Thank you for staying until the very end. This content was carefully researched, thoughtfully developed, and manually crafted by our team to deliver meaningful lessons and genuine value to your life. We believe stories have power. The power to heal, the power to inspire, the power to remind you who you really are. When the world tries to make you forget, until next time, remember this. You are enough. You have always been enough. And anyone who ever made you doubt that only revealed their own weakness, not yours. Take care of yourself, and we will see you in the next story.